We have lots of NHL news and rumors to discuss in today's video, including the latest NHL trade rumors around the league. We've had a flurry of activity. Now we have some updated lists and rumors from many NHL insiders. Today's rumors focus on teams like the Buffalo Sabres, the Montreal Canadiens, the Vancouver Canucks, and the Seattle Kraken. We have a potential lengthy suspension coming for Minnesota Wild forward Ryan Hartman. More news from the NHL waiver wire. We also have a couple of new players named for Team Finland for the upcoming Four Nation Face-Off tournament, and Montreal Canadiens fans are certainly having a little bit of an issue with the performance recently of Patrik Laine. He was benched in today's part of today's game against the Anaheim Ducks, and things have certainly taken a turn with the Habs that we'll discuss Laine's performance. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Let's get started first with a quick update from the NHL waiver wire. Yesterday we had found out that the Vancouver Canucks had placed forward Philip DiGiuseppe on waivers. Today we found out he in fact did clear, so he can be reassigned to their AHL affiliate. So nothing new on waivers. We've had a lot of waiver wire activity over the past week, and could pick up next week too as we head into the Four Nation break here coming up in the next week or 10 days from now. But all in all, nothing further on that for right now. Now, Minnesota Wild forward Ryan Hartman is facing a fairly lengthy suspension. We got confirmation today from the NHL Department of Player Safety that he's been offered an in-person hearing for an incident that happened last night in the game between the Minnesota Wild and the Ottawa Senators. At the very end of the second period, pretty much as time had expired, there was a couple seconds ticked on the clock, and there was a face-off between Tim Stützle and Ryan Hartman and the Minnesota end. And Hartman essentially, once the puck was dropped, it almost looks like, if you're a wrestling fan, it almost looks like he gave him like a DDT. Like he pushes him basically down face first into the ice. Stützle's helmet comes off. He's cut. He got a big gash up here side of his eye, blood all coming down the side of his face. They gave him a match penalty, intent to injure, and those are automatically reviewed by player safety. Now, the issue here is Ryan Hartman has a history. He's been suspended, I believe, 4 times in the past, and he's got several fines on top of that. Hartman was having himself quite a game. Earlier in the game, he tried to fight Travis Hamonic. Hamonic didn't really want to fight. It was a 3-0 lead. Basically, what he kind of read lips and basically said, like, I'm not fighting you right now. Like, there's no need here for this. So he kind of took exception to that. Ended up with Stützle. There was a little bit of a back and forth. I believe he was kind of mouthing at Stützle. Stützle gave him a slash or something, and then this was kind of a retaliation on the face-off, which was way over the top, way overboard. And just, where we went earlier in the, there was some incidents involving those two players earlier in the period too. And they called both players, ended up calling Hartman for embellishment as well. So he was having himself quite a game and ended up getting kicked out, match penalty. And because of his history, like, an in-person hearing doesn't guarantee, but means they can suspend for more than 5 games. I think he's going to be getting a lengthy one here. I'm personally going to say, because of his history and because of the situation with Stützle here, I'm going to say that I'm thinking it's probably 6. That's what I'm predicting. It's going to be a big one. He's going to lose a lot of money, and he's going to be gone from the Wild lineup for an extended time. And of course, the Minnesota Wild already kind of have their fair share of injuries and stuff going on, losing another player of Hartman's caliber, who's not having a great year, I don't think, but at the same time, he in the past has been a big piece of their team there. So that's really unfortunate news. Now, sticking with a bunch of updates around the rosters, obviously we're talking about Minnesota, Ottawa. We'll talk about Ottawa first. They did confirm today that young goaltender who has been on an absolutely phenomenal run, Levi Merilainen, had to be sent back to the American Hockey League. Now, that's bad news and good news. The bad news is the kid's been on a heater here for the Senators and kind of saved their season when it was in doubt. I mean, Anton Forsberg at the time when Merilainen was first called up was kind of a little shaky, wasn't given consistent performances. And Linus Ullmark, who was on an absolute heater, got hurt. And a lot of people had concerns and doubts. Will the Sens fall out of the playoff race? Is, their season going to have, that much more adversity here because of the Ullmark injury? And Muriel got called up and went on a heater himself. In 13 games played, he's got 3 shutouts. Save percentage is over .925. Goals against average hovering around 2 or less. The kid's been phenomenal. And I think, to be honest, with Forsberg's contract expiring, I think Muriel's put himself in an excellent spot to possibly be the backup goaltender for the Sens next year. At the very least, he's definitely played himself into a big part of the team's future. No doubt. Exactly if that's full-time in the NHL next year or not, it's a big piece and a huge progression. But unfortunately, because of their roster situation and salary cap, Muriel has to go back down to the AHL. So Ullmark is ready to play on this trip. The Sens have a 4-game road trip leading into the Four Nation break, starting with the Nashville Predators tomorrow evening. It's the only game on the NHL schedule. Then they have back-to-back, not on back-to-back nights, but consecutive games against the Lightning. They played 2 times in Tampa, which is a little unusual, but probably good for travel, to be honest. And then they play the Panthers. So they have 3 games in the state of Florida after they play the Preds on Monday. They'll go into the next following weekend, which is when they'll conclude their break. So obviously good news for them. Nick Jensen's also on the road trip. He's missed the last 3 or 4 games as well. So there could be more reinforcements coming from the Sens, who have now won 4 straight home games on that homestand and have been pretty hot, moved up into 3rd place in the Atlantic, and so far at least have held it down, but they certainly have lots of work ahead of them and lots of teams chasing them, so it won't take much. The race between the Atlantic and the Eastern Conference playoffs are so tight that you have a 2 or 3 game losing or winning streak, and it could major impact. You could go from being 3rd place to being out. You could go from 3rd place to wild card up to 3rd, or it's so tight, it's crazy, and a lot of teams in the mix. I imagine over the next week or the next probably 5 to 10 games, we're going to start to see teams kind of fall off, and some will keep going, and that'll kind of sort itself out. But for right now, lots of activity there and standing changes on a daily basis. Some other updates around the league today. We had Columbus lost Dante Fabro today, left the game injured, so he could be out for a bit. Detroit, we got news on Jeff Petrie. He's been out for about a month now, and he's required surgery. It looks like they were trying some other things, rehab, whatnot. Surgery ended up being required for his injury, and he's going to be out for another 6 to 8. So he's out on a longer-term basis. He probably could be back before the end of the season, but at this rate, it's going to be the bulk of it that he'll miss. JT Compher was officially put to IR as well, and Patrick Kane was activated today. The Sharks brought back Vitek Vanacek from the minors, and Yaroslav Askarov returned to the AHL. He's going down for the AHL All-Star festivities that are going on here. So Askarov certainly had he's had his ups and downs, but overall in a good spot here. I think San Jose will be relying on him more so next year. But to me, San Jose kind of very much in tank mode. They moved Blackwood, they moved their leading scorer Granlund, they moved CC. To me, as much as they want to be more competitive, and their kids celebrating Neil Smith, etc., getting opportunity, they're very much at this point in the year trying to make sure they get a high pick for sure. Vancouver, Quinn Hughes was a late scratch for the Canucks in tonight's game against the Red Wings, so that's sort of not going to be good for them. I know the game is not over as I record this video. The Canucks are down 2-1 to the Red Wings, so it'll probably be done by the time I'm done recording this video. We'll see Montreal return Owen Beck and Logan Mailloux back to the AHL today as well, again for the AHL All-Star festivities, so that's good on him for doing that. Obviously, they're out west right now. The Habs did suffer a loss to the Anaheim Ducks today, which was a big one because obviously it's a team they really should be beating if they're going to be a playoff team this year. The Canadiens have been on a bit of a skid, which we can kind of transition easily into the Patrick Laine stuff. Patrick Laine was benched today for the bulk of the 3rd period. His ice time was just over 10 minutes total. Kirby Dach was also kind of in the doghouse with the head coach Marty St. Louis as well. And, he only played 11 minutes. So certainly, St. Louis certainly holding these guys accountable. I didn't get to see a lot of the Habs game myself. I only seen a little bit of it, but I know a lot of fans were not happy with Laine today. Basically, if you look at his stats, since he's joined the Canadiens, he has 12 goals in 24 games, which is good, right? So in the course of a full NHL season, that would put him on pretty much close to right around a 40-goal pace. A lot of those are the one-timers on the power play. Besides the one-time clapper on the power play, has Laine really done a lot? And the answer is no. He's a one-trick pony, in my opinion. But that one trick that he does really, really well, he does better than a lot of guys in the league and can certainly help the team. There's no doubt about that. But I think the Habs and their fans are starting to see some of the frustrations that other organizations like Winnipeg and Columbus have had with this kid before. And he's still a kid, in my opinion, compared to me he is anyways. He's in his mid-20s now. But Laine, he's goalless in 6, pointless in 4, and the comments from fans are like that he's slow and lazy and just not giving a solid enough effort. Some people said it looked like he was out for a free skate today. Just not good. Invisible, not doing much of anything, and that's certainly not what they need him to be. When he first came to that Habs lineup, he was electric. He was, like I said, even though the bulk of what he was doing well was kind of like almost the same as Ovechkin in a way. Like Ovechkin, although has been a more dynamic player throughout the years, but especially into his older years, the one thing you can always count on is a one-timer from the circle. Like, you know what's coming, you can't stop it. Laine was very similar. Like, the release on this guy is phenomenal. He can shoot the puck better than 98% of the league. But, that's the thing, is it's to play away from the puck, the battles. That's the frustration that other teams and teammates have had of him in the past. Is you see, he's a huge guy. He's like 6'4". He's, big, heavy guy, but like he doesn't play like it, and you don't always get that consistent effort. So obviously, I'm not sure this is going to lead to anything per se. I mean, I know Montreal obviously traded for him; they're committed to him for now. But yeah, I mean, clearly the frustration is boiling there with the coach, which is why he was benched. So let me know your thoughts on, especially if you're a Habs fan, what you think of Laine. The goal scoring is nice, but don't you want the consistent effort and the, just the stronger effort out there? Like, you're making millions of dollars. At least you can look like you're trying. At the end of the day, that's, pretty important stuff, in my opinion. A couple of updates as well for the Four Nation Faceoff. We know the Finnish team had, unfortunately, had some injuries. We knew Muriel was out. We found out Yanni Hakanpää wasn't coming back, which wasn't a huge shocker. He's been out with the Leafs for 2 months or something. Barely played this year. That signing with the Leafs looks pretty much, like a bad idea. But Henri Jokiharju and Urho Vakanainen are the replacement defensemen for Finland. So Jokiharju, of course, of the Sabres. Vakanainen currently now with the Rangers. So they will be joining the Finns for the Four Nation Face-Off. Now, as I mentioned in the rumor mill for trades, of course, we saw some big activity here in recent days. And I know some NHL reporters and networks are updating their trade bait boards. And we're going to look at the one from the fourthperiod.com and David Pagnotta. With JT Miller being traded, now he has Elias Pettersson elevated to number 1. Now, we're going to combine that with information from Elliot Friedman from Saturday Headlines. And Pagnotta even references it in his notes. But if you read through his article on this trade bait board, but essentially he's got Pettersson as number 1 because of the interest. And we knew there was a point where the Canucks were taking calls on both Pettersson and Miller. They're considering all options. There's a possibility both could get traded. And just because Miller's been traded, it's not an absolute foregone conclusion that Pettersson won't. But I think for the time being, like Elliot was saying on Headlines, is that they kind of want to give Pettersson a chance to breathe without the noise, see if he can elevate and find a game that they signed him for. He's got an $11.5 million long-term contract to be a number 1 center. And he hasn't played like it. And he's struggled really with performance pretty much ever since he signed the contract extension. So, obviously they're not happy. And he has a no trade clause, but that doesn't kick in until July 1st of the coming summer. So that's kind of the other part around this, is trying to get something done if they're going to before he has all the control like Miller did and diminishes the return. So if they're going to trade him, it's going to happen sometime before that. It doesn't have to be a deadline deal. It could be a early offseason, early summer type trade, draft trade, something along those lines. But we'll see. But I know Pagnotta references the fact that as much as the Canucks want, kind of take a pause here, that he expects a team like the Sabres to continue to push and to try to find a way to make this acquisition. Ever since they had to trade Jack Eichel because he wanted out because of, well, largely how they handled things there. It was their own doing, their own fault. But they've needed this type of player. I mean, Tage Thompson, at the time, after Eichel was traded, the Thompson deal didn't really come along together until later. Like, Tage Thompson really looked like at the time that he might not work out. Unfortunately, he was the big piece that came over in the O'Reilly trade from the Blues, and it just took a while for him to find things. And once they found, he found that, well, his shot and everything, just kind of put it all together, he exploded. And, well, now they got a good top six center. But I think it's fair to say that if Thompson was your number two, you'd be even deeper. There's always some players there in Buffalo that have their futures questioned, you could say, that they're getting interest to. But the Pettersson is still number one on the trade bait board, largely because even though, like I said, the Canucks are taking a pause, a team like Buffalo, to some degree Columbus, is still pushing. Although a trade for the offseason is way more likelier than now, you just never know. If the next couple of weeks don't go well, then the Canucks are definitely out of the playoff picture. I think anything would put anything past Alvin and Rutherford. We know they're aggressive and we know they're willing to make bold moves. But I do think some time for Pettersson would be good. And really, if you're the Buffalo Sabres, this season is pretty much lost. You're probably looking at next year anyway. If you're going to make that big acquisition and you really want that player and the team wants to wait, maybe you do it in the summer. I don't know. But yeah, expect Pettersson to still have lots of interest. His name's going to be out there. He's going to be getting attention, but probably less likely we see it happen. But in Buffalo, the players that they're on the trade bait board as being highly coveted here are players like Dylan Cousins and Owen Power. And it's believed that between Byram and Power, it almost seems more likely that Buffalo would want to sign Byram and trade Power if they had to pick. They like the dynamic of Byram with Dahlin. Obviously, we saw Tage Thompson. We saw another match penalty. I suspect tomorrow we're going to be talking about the same thing with Ryan Hartman. It's same thing for Stefan Nason tomorrow. He was given a match penalty as well. Tage Thompson on a blindsided, dirty hit to the head. No response. A big defenseman out there like Matthias Samuelsson doesn't do anything. Like, I can't believe the Sabres didn't respond to that at all. Quite shocking, to be honest, when your top player, top scorer goes down like that and nothing. So I think their blue line needs to be revamped regardless from a defensive standpoint. And there are people that believe that a Power trade might be more likely than a Byram trade. Obviously, like I said, because of where Byram slots, and maybe they can sign him because he needs a new contract, or or Power's already signed long term. Maybe they feel like they can get Byram a little bit cheaper and find a different dynamic, change up the blue line, and maybe even come out ahead cap wise. I'm not sure, but the cap's going up. That shouldn't be too big of a problem for them. But Cousins and Power are very much out there. A team like Vancouver's been linked to Cousins. Penner also links a team like the Calgary Flames, Nashville Predators, Chicago Blackhawks. So again, none of those teams are surprising. They all need a centerman, and Cousins is young enough and interesting enough that I can see drawing attention. Another name that's from a center that's drawing attention, but for a different reason, is Jake Evans of Montreal, as they've gone 0-4-1, as I've talked about here recently in their last 5 games. Suddenly they went from being right in the mix in the race. Now they're not out of it, but they're far enough back that it's going to be a big mountain to climb to get back into that wild card spot. And right now they're on a California trip. They lost their first game to the Ducks. They're playing the LA Kings and the San Jose Sharks before that trip's over. They pretty much need to win both of them. If they lose one, win one even, it's not going to help. And they've kind of gotten to the point here that if they come out of this California trip, and nothing really changes in the standings, I think you're going to possibly see them more likely be sellers. Now, of course, like I said before, Montreal's not going to stray too far from their plan anyways, but I'm not sure that some of their pending unrestricted free agents have a ton of value. A guy like Evans would, though. Teams like Washington have been linked to him. New Jersey's been linked to him to some degree, the Toronto Maple Leafs. But obviously a solid bottom six centerman having a career year. They're definitely going to have a ton of interest. And Evans is pretty high now on the trade bait board with Pagnotta's list here. So we'll see if the Habs do move him now that they're slowly falling out of contention. A couple names in Seattle to watch as well. Brandon Tanev, Jamie Alexiak. The Kraken are definitely pretty much out of a playoff spot here. Like, we know that they're not likely getting back in. They're going to probably retool. Tanev's a pending UFA. There's a bunch of teams listed as being interested in him. He has both the teams in Ontario, the Leafs and the Sens. I can see him being a valuable fit on either one of their teams for a playoff run. Washington and Vegas also mentioned here as well. Tanev would be interesting if he could play with his brother in Toronto. That would probably be appealing, but any of those teams are looking for bottom six help. Brandon Tanev's a big, good size, good skater, can play in all situations, so I can see the interest there. Jamie Alexiak, as I mentioned, a big defenseman, of course, getting interest apparently from Toronto, Edmonton, and his old team in Dallas. So certainly Alexiak, not a guaranteed player to move. I'm not sure, but at this rate, from what we've seen and heard, it sounds like Seattle might be more likely to move than keep him. But again, another experienced defenseman, and been around a fair bit of time. Great size, really big man. You can use him on the PK. You can use him on the third pair. Makes sense that some of these teams trying to shore up their blue line. It would make sense. Now, Dallas, on the other hand, even though they're linked to Alexiak, they just picked up Cody Ceci, so I'm not sure that they're going to continue to add on the blue line, but you never know, I guess. They did lose Nils Lundqvist as well for the season, so not that he played a huge role there, but obviously the depth is going to be impacted here a little bit. But Toronto-Edmonton would make a lot of sense as well. But again, time will see. So a couple of names in Seattle. Certainly lots of Sabres are on this list. Cousins, Power, and Pettersson's going to be the big one to watch. Like I said, I think it's less likely now that we see a Pettersson trade. If we do, it'd be in the offseason. But the Vancouver Canucks are going to be a very interesting team here to watch over the next few weeks. I think that they're not done dealing. I don't think they're done retooling this team. And I wouldn't be shocked to see more activity from them, even if it involves their new top centerman with JT Miller being out of the mix. Brock Besser, as we talked about yesterday, is certainly a player to watch in Vancouver as well. Just not getting the same attention as a guy like Pettersson because of the pedigree and the long-term deal. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumor updates in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.